Hey guys, today I'm going to show you the easiest way, or the mistakes I made when I was fitting a trolling motor to my FishPro Sea-Doo, and how I went about it, what I used, and some of the mistakes that I made. I'll also go through some of the tools that I've used, and I've kind of got the ski still apart. I haven't put it all back together, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to show you what I did. I've written a bit of a list of things that I'm going to go through here. Feel free to take a screenshot of that. Here's the tools that I used. Some of the mistakes that I made, and I'll go through those, and the components that I required as well. Okay, all right, so let's have a quick look at where I'm at now. So I've got my battery installed. I have wiring running through up to inside of the box. Now a lot of people actually install them here. There's a hole that you can grab on top of there that has an angle bracket. You can install your circuit breaker there. I installed mine inside of the front hatch. I'll show you that. For two reasons. One, I can reset the circuit breaker if required. So basically when we push this, there would be a broken circuit. If I needed to turn it back on, I push that back down and it will start everything up for me. The other reason is that I can undo this Anderson plug. Now guys, I haven't installed all of this yet. I'm just showing you it while it's apart because I'm going to pull a few things apart. And you'll also notice I have a second Anderson plug here, and this comes from the main starter battery, because I want to be able to use, just in case I get stuck outside with a flat battery, and I've had two so far that have failed. I can plug this Anderson plug into this Anderson plug, and it will actually allow me to jump start the battery while I'm out there without taking the seat off. Taking the seat off, if you ever try to take off your seat while you're out there, it is a nightmare. It's dangerous, especially if the swell's picking up. Okay, so let's get back to the first thing. How did I do it? Obviously the first thing I do is take the seats off, and we would unscrew this back section here, and this exposes this part of the motor. Right, I put them all on one side, and I actually put all my bolts into an order. You can see here I have a tablet tray of how they come out, and that way when I go to put it back together, all my right bolts will be with the right components. Now once you get to that stage and you have this off, the next thing you need to do, and I do suggest you sort of do this straight up and then get them out of the way, is you need to undo this little plug here, and there's a screw down here under the seat, and we're going to take this piece off. This one comes off really easy, no big deal. Down over here, and then you're going to get access to the bolts of this thing here. Whether you've got speakers or not, you might have to put your finger underneath and get your speaker out. I didn't opt for speakers, doesn't help with fishing, so no speakers. And then this one here is a bit more of a problem. You do have a screw that goes in there, but the problem with this one here is, and I'll show you, is it's got this latch, and it's pretty good design from Sea-Doo. I actually learned this off YouTube, is that you have to put your hand up underneath and push this up to be able to slide it back. Once you slide that back, you'll notice that you can now see this. And you're also going to need to remove this front piece here as well. Right, that slides forwards, but there are two screws. No, there's no screw. Oh yeah, there's two screws, one in each side here, which you can get access to from inside of here. Take that off. And what you actually need to do, I'll quickly give you a rundown, is you need to undo these bolts around here. There are two up inside here, and I suggest you take those two off first. But there was a mistake that I did make, and that was I didn't mark. I should have got a texter and marked this so that it went back in the exact same position, because when I put it back on, it didn't line up, and my latches were difficult to pull up to get this front cover up. So if you mark that first before you take it off, then when you go and tighten these bolts up, you need to pull it forwards. And I end up getting a ratchet strap and strapping it to here, there, and pulling this forward just by putting the strap over here, and then tightening it up and pulling it forwards a little bit so I could get it adjusted correctly. So you're going to take all of these excuse me, out of here, and because we need to be able to bolt through the hull. So if you're not into drilling through your new ski, then don't put a trolling motor on, because you need to, right? So what happens is, once we undo these bolts here, I push down the lid. First I pushed down the lid, undid the bolts, and then as soon as I took the last bolt out, this sprung forwards because the shock absorber was pulling on it. So that was okay, and you know what, in retrospect I'll do it that way again, because these are a nightmare to take off, and I still haven't found how to take them off. If you found how to take them off, put a link down below, guys. Okay, so I take this off here, it comes up, and therefore I can now get access to the inside of the hull to put bolts all the way through. I don't recommend putting screws through the hull. They don't have enough holding capacity. Even though underneath here I do have a black silicone Sika product to stick it down. It's just for double strength, because when you're outside, this is copying a bit of a flogging, especially when it gets choppy and you're trying to get home to beat a storm or something like that. Right, now my next tip is, before you actually start to mark this out, you really want to get a level on your trailer and get the trailer level, so that way you can put your level on top of here and ensure that you're going to get it right, because it's difficult to know exactly where it goes. Now this one was actually this, and I'll put some links below to where you can get these brackets from. I didn't make it. I'll show you another one that I made earlier quickly. This is for a GDR, and I made this one up sort of myself and got it. And you know what, GDR is great ski if there's no wind. This is a better ski if you've got swell and wind. It's more stable in the water. This one's more fun. Okay, so getting back to it. So what I had to do was get that level, and I actually had to get my wife to hold that for me, and then I could mark around here. And I just used tape to mark, because I didn't want to mark my hole, so I taped all the way around it. Now one of the mistakes I did make is I didn't tape all the way around it before I put the silicone on and pulled it in, and therefore I had to go and cut the silicone away from here when it oozed out the side. Whereas if I had it taped here first, I could have just run a knife down one edge and then cut the silicone off. I would have got a neater finish there. I've got a list here, I'm just going to read. Okay, so once I had this marked out, I needed to hold it there temporarily, and I used this self-tapper, which is about 20 mil or 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch, that I just screwed there and there to hold it in position, and therefore I could drill through. I needed to make sure that inside I wasn't going to drill through into something I was going to damage. It turns out that there was nothing in there to damage, but it does get tied up here because you have some flotation or styrofoam inside of there to keep the ski afloat if you ever get into trouble. So you tack this together and then drill through. Now when you drill through it slowly. You don't want to push or put force on it. Let the drill, nice sharp drill through slowly, and therefore you don't damage the inside of the fiberglass. Now one thing, guys, really important to use stainless steel, high quality stainless steel fittings. Don't go down to your local store and buy something that isn't marine grade, because you'll regret it down the track. Okay, so once I had my motor installed level, or the bracket installed level, this goes on later obviously. The first thing I did is actually install my battery. So I bought the battery and ensured that it fit on the plate before I actually went and put it in, because there's not a great deal of room and it's a little bit frustrating actually installing that battery cage. And what I did is, basically it's a piece of aluminium U-channel, and I'll show you what tools I used and what I used to do that, because it's probably really important. Is the screws are actually like this, and they go through in the bottom of down here. It's on the angle so the battery would fit. The screws go through this bottom bracket here, and then you pack it up with some rubber. I left that on there, didn't cut off to show you, so that the battery doesn't foul on the screws. All right, but before you do that, it's really important that you clean it thoroughly. Now I use this stuff called wax and grease remover, and I give it 2 or 3 cleans first on the underside of the bracket and also on the underside of the jet ski, so I get good adherence there. And then what I do is I tack it down, make sure it all fits, check it again, and then once that's done, undo the tacks. Use something similar to this. This is Sika 291. It's an adhesive for marine. That's going to do most of the work. That's also underneath the motor bracket out the front as well. Okay, so once I've got that motor bracket installed, I'm then going to use wire to connect it, and you'll notice here that I have a pretty heavy gauge wire. I would say that would be 8 millimeters. It is a marine grade wire, so that it doesn't corrode down the track if it gets salt on it. And then I've run that along this pipe here, and you can see I've started the zip clip, but I haven't finished it yet. I'm still showing you what's going on. And that wire runs through to the back of here, which is my circuit breaker. Pull that out. So my circuit breaker essentially is cut through the inside of the plastic here. And then from the back of that, I ran the positive wire out into this Anderson plug, and then back to there. I also ran my ignition wire. You'll notice that I also have a wire running from my jet ski battery, the engine start battery, to the back of here as well. And then I ran it back through into this one here. So I've got my negative is directly connected to the battery. All positives go through this circuit breaker. That way, if anything happens and you get water in there, or something, a fish hook gets in there, whatever, it will trip the circuit breaker before burning your ski to the ground. Probably one other thing important to note here is that when we take this out, it's in there tight because there's 4 wires on the back of it. I am going to fix that in with pop rivets later. Is that if you shine a light down here, you can and push your wire through, someone can actually get there and fish the wire out of here pretty easily. So you don't have to take this off. I made the mistake of trying to take all this off and realised how much of a nightmare it was, and decided not to do it because there's a lot going on to take this out. It's insane. Trust me on that one. Right, so you can get all these wires through no problems. Now, the wire that goes to the motor actually sits up. You won't see this, but I'm just going to show you because I haven't got the cover back on. It actually sits up underneath this cowl here. Right. Another mistake I made is the distance that I put to there means that this is going to hit it. So when you do it, mark the back of that with texture and drill your hole behind it. I elongated the hole with the drill just by moving it left and right until I got it exactly right, and therefore I have a nice fit. I will put some silicone on that later. Right, so now the Anderson plug goes all the way through to here, and now I have power to here. Right, then I use my remote to steer it and so on. It is important too, guys, is that you double check. I'm not sure what type of bracket you're going to get. As I said, I will put links to what I got from below in the comments. But it's important to put your motor down, double check that your motor isn't going to foul on anything. And the closer you can get the motor to the center of the ski, the better, because what happens is this has got weight in it, and when you're riding down with weight on one side, it's going to try and do that, right? You kind of want to balance that up with the battery. And in retrospect, I probably wouldn't have bought a lithium battery in the back. I probably would have just bought a marine grade lead acid battery, because I think it would counterbalance it better. It would also be the same voltage as my ignition battery, and therefore I wouldn't have had to change my ignition battery inside of here. That would have saved me a fair bit of money. It probably would have saved $500. So guys, where am I standing now? This bracket here cost me $700. However, I did find one on another website, which I'll put the link below, that could have used that. And the battery bracket that I bought was about $100 Australian. And to be honest with you, I probably could have just used something like this. This is just a channel that rectangular hollow section channel. I could have just cut it down, and as long as the battery fitted in here, I would have been right. But I didn't know that until I bought it. So that's what's going on with that. If you've got any questions or I missed anything, guys, ask the questions below. I'll do my best to answer them as soon as I can. No one's sponsoring me to do this, guys. I've got heaps of good tips and a couple of cool things that you'll notice that I've created, just so that we can get more out of our fishing and less time messing around on the water. Now, before we go, I'm just going to quickly go through the tools, what I use them for. This is for soldering. When I solder, I don't crimp when I'm doing marine applications. I actually solder, which means flood solder. So as you can see, I've got solder here. And what I do is, see if I can find a connector. I thought I had one. I might have one in my pocket. Whether it's your Anderson plug or your these connectors, I don't know what they're called, I put them in a vise and then I heat them like this. And in the other hand, I have my solder. I could push the solder into the end until it melts and fills out 3/4 of the way with hot liquid solder. I would then grab my wire, strip the wire of course, and push it inside of that connector, whether Anderson or not. And then I will also use shrink wrap. Now this is a black one, I use most of my clear. I prefer to use clear shrink wrap, but make sure you buy a big enough diameter to cover your wire. You should match the size of the wire with the internal dimension here, or make this a little bit bigger, because that way it'll go in together easy, because you're kind of in a hurry. You've got hot solder at the same time you're trying to put a wire in there and hold it all together at the same time, and then put your shrink wrap over the top later. That will save you a heap of work. And the most dangerous thing when you're doing this type of stuff is that if you get a short circuit, which basically means if your positive and negative go together, you can burn the thing down, right? So you don't want a short circuit. So everything that I've actually done, you can see that I have shrink wrap on here, and I have shrink wrap on every single connection that I've done, and therefore it makes it a lot safer, and it gives it a better job, less likely to pull apart. What else have I got? Okay, so terminal grease. I don't recommend any particular brands, but it's really important to use the right products to stop corrosion down the track. You don't want to do all of this work and before you know it, you don't have it. So everything that's made out of metal, I would usually put that on it. I'll use terminal grease, and if it is electrical conductor, I'll use this dielectric grease there. The tools that I use, pliers, I already mentioned that. A big, you need one of these big end screwdrivers, and a small flat blader to get your Anderson plugs apart. I did use this to cut. I'm going to use these large pop rivets to install and fit things inside of the plastic. I haven't done that yet. You need one of these, or something that you can get. There's little plugs in the front that go in the duct. I'll quickly show you. Right here, to get the duct out. So when you actually undo this, you've got to pull these out, and that way the duct comes out of the way. You slide it underneath here so you can get your hand in there. Now guys, if you're a bit of a pussy and you don't like cuts and stuff on your arms, you might want to put a fishing shirt on, or just sand the edges off a little bit. I just did it anyway, so it does cut and mark your arm up a little bit, because it is hard. This is not easy, guys. We're talking probably, after all the mistakes, hopefully I've saved in this video, you might get it done in 4 hours. However, it's taken me probably 8 or 12 hours to get to where I am. Put it all back together from here is a 15-minute job, not a big deal. But anyway, guys, if you've got any questions, ask them below. Follow the channel, because I'll probably show you the finished product, maybe some cool fish that I catch here. I'm up on the Sunshine Coast of Queensland. And I look forward to hearing your stories too, guys. So if you've got some comments or questions, ask them below, and I'll do my best to answer them. If you like the video, push like. If you dislike the video, push dislike. But make sure you tell me why, because if you just dislike and don't tell me why, I'd just disregard it. Alright guys, cheers.